In this video, we discuss learning outcome number 2, which is all about recognizing misleading or deceptive graphs and then correcting them or replacing them in order to present our data graphically in a more truthful way. So here's our first example. What's wrong with this picture? Looks like we've got the percentage of people experiencing nausea when they're taking OxyContin versus a placebo. Now, if we don't look at the graph too carefully, it looks like the percentage of people experiencing nausea when they take OxyContin is maybe 20 times the percentage of people experiencing nausea when they take the placebo, but that's not quite accurate. Let's look at the graph more carefully. If we read this vertical axis, it looks like the percentage of people experiencing nausea when taking OxyContin is about 23%, and the percentage of people experiencing nausea when they take the placebo is about 11%, or a little bit less than 11%. 11% and 23% are not different by a factor of 10. The problem with this picture, the reason why it's so misleading, is that our vertical axis doesn't start at 0%, it starts at 10%. We call this a non-zero vertical axis. It's important that we always examine a graph carefully to see whether that vertical axis begins at some point other than 0. Because if it does, it's going to exaggerate the differences between those two groups. When I look at this graph, it looks like the percentage of people experiencing nausea when taking OxyContin is 20 times, 10 or 20 times more than the percentage of people experiencing nausea when they take the placebo. Let's recreate this graph, but instead of starting at 10%, let's start at 0% so that we're more accurately depicting that relationship. This graph on the right is much better, because here we see that this height of the bar is roughly a little bit more than twice the height of the bar for the placebo group. And that's accurate. The percentage of people experiencing nausea when taking OxyContin is about 23%. And 23% is about twice, or a little bit more than twice, that 11% that the placebo group is experiencing. So the graph on the right is good because it starts at 0%, and it allows us to really compare that oxytocin group to the placebo group. Whereas this graph on the left makes it look like you get really sick, or you're much more likely to get really sick when taking OxyContin as opposed to the placebo. And while it is true that you are more likely to experience nausea when you're taking OxyContin than when you're taking the placebo, the difference here is very exaggerated. The graph on the right more clearly displays that difference. So the non-zero vertical axis is one of two ways that our graphs can be misleading. These use a vertical scale that starts at some number greater than 0, and it exaggerates the difference between groups. Other graphs that can be deceptive, include pictographs. Pictographs are graphs using drawings of objects to represent data. The problem with these are that data that are one-dimensional are often depicted with two-dimensional or three-dimensional objects. Now, I don't really like this slide very much because there's a lot of text on it, but I think the text is so good that I wanted you to have it in your notes. So I'm going to read it to you and discuss it with you. I like the concrete examples that are discussed in this first bullet point. It says, data that are one-dimensional in nature, such as a budget amount. So those are numbers of dollars, are often depicted with two-dimensional objects such as dollar bills, or three-dimensional objects such as stacks of coins or homes or barrels. The problem with that is that if I change a one-dimensional object by a factor of 2, so I just double it, well, it's going to change the two-dimensional version of that by a factor of 4, or the three-dimensional version of that by a factor of 8. So let's say we have a square and we double each side. Its area would then increase by a factor of 4. We don't double the area when we double the length of the side of a square. We actually multiply that area not by 2, but by 2 squared, because that's what happens when you're computing areas. You're squaring things. You're squaring those two dimensions. You're multiplying one dimension by another dimension. So when we intend to double something, we're actually increasing the area by a factor of 4. So that's why we shouldn't use something that's two-dimensional to represent something that's one-dimensional. Similarly, if you have a cube and you double each side of a cube, well, you're going to take that side that you've doubled, and then you're going to multiply it by itself, and you're going to multiply it by itself, and you're going to multiply it by itself. Well, what that's going to do is it's going to multiply the original volume by a factor not of 2, but of 2 cubed, or 8. So if we're using something that is essentially 3-dimensional to represent something that's 1-dimensional, when we intend to double something, we're actually exaggerating that difference. It's going to look like the difference between the original and the new picture. Like we're going to see visually that something has increased in size by a factor of 8 instead of by a factor of 2. And we don't want that. So here's the main point. Data that are 1-dimensional in nature should be depicted with 1-dimensional objects. If something is 2-dimensional in nature, you can use 2-dimensional objects. If something is 3-dimensional in nature, you can use 3-dimensional objects. But for the most part in our class, we're talking about data that are 1-dimensional. So we should represent them by something that's 1-dimensional. And you might say, well, what about a bar in a bar graph? Well, yeah, that bar is a 2-dimensional object, but we're really just focused on the height. And since the height of the bar in a bar graph is 1-dimensional, that is going to accurately depict something like a number that is also 1-dimensional. Now, this is the reason that the author of our textbook, Mario Triola, is not a fan of pie charts, because pie charts are usually used to visualize 1-dimensional data, usually categorical data, and you've got like numbers of things and a number of categories. And then we look at these slices of a pie. Well, these slices of a pie, these are areas. And so every time you use a pie chart, you're using something that is 2-dimensional to represent something that's 1-dimensional. That's why Mr. Triola does not like using pie charts. That's why he suggests that we use the Pareto chart instead. And I think that that's a very good idea. But pie charts are so common that we studied them anyway. So the problem with pictographs is that data that are 1-dimensional are sometimes depicted by things that are 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional. And a pie chart is one example of that, but it's an example that we tend to overlook because pie charts are so popular. Now here's an example with some actual numbers. It turns out that in 1970, 37% of adults smoked. In 2013, 18% of adults smoked. Now, if you just look at the numbers, like let's take 18% and double it. Well, that would be 36%. So this 37% is roughly twice the percentage of people that smoked in 2013. Or you can think of the the percentage of people that smoke in 2013 as roughly half of the percentage of people that smoked in 1970. If we depict this information with this graphic, which is intended to be a cigarette, you can think of it as 2D if you think of it on a piece of paper, or you can think of it as 3D because it's supposed to represent this 3-dimensional cigarette. Basically, the difference between this cigarette and this cigarette is that we have multiplied all of the dimensions by a number that's just a little bit more than 2. So if I take this diameter and I double it, and I take the diameter running perpendicular to that, and I double it so that that circle on the end has increased in area by a factor of 4. And then I take the length of the cigarette and I double it. Well, the volume of this large cigarette over here looks like it's 8 times, if we were just thinking of doubling it, 8 times the volume of this cigarette over here. But the reality is those two numbers, the 37% and the 18%, are only different by a factor of 2, not a factor of 8. So representing this data with something that's 3-dimensional is misleading. It makes it look like this 37% is something like 8 times as much as the number of people that smoked in 2013, when the reality is it's about half as many people that smoke in 2013 as compared to 1970. Or you can think of the number of people that smoked in 1970 is about twice the percentage of people that smoked, US adults that smoked in 2013. Now this last slide is deals with principles for visualizing quantitative data. It comes from the Visual Display of Quantitative Information by Edward Tufte. And it's just got 4 principles. It's really 3 principles, as 2 of them are very similar. So here's the first one. If you have a very small data set, so data sets of 20 values or fewer, it's better to use a table than to use a graph, because if the graph is supposed to summarize all of that data. And if there are so few data, if there are a very small data sets, it really doesn't make sense to summarize it in that way. A table could more clearly convey that information. So use a table when the data sets are small. Now, when we create graphs, we want to make the focus on the true nature of the data and not other design elements. It shouldn't be about things that are flashy. It should be about the numbers themselves. And it should be about visualizing and making sense of the numbers at a glance. People shouldn't have to think too hard to understand what your graph is trying to say. Similarly, a graph should not distort the data. Our goal is to reveal the true nature of the data, and that means not distorting it. And then finally, this is just a design idea that's consistent with the second and third bullet point. Almost all of the ink in a graph should be used for the data and not other design elements. Our goal with graphing something is to enhance understanding of the data and enhance understanding of relationships, and to make it sort of intuitively obvious just by looking at it visually what the relationship between 2 numbers are, or a set of numbers are. If we're looking at frequency counts, like the different categories. So we want to use tables for small data sets, focus on the true nature of the data, not distort it, and use the ink for the data itself rather than other design elements.